All right, it's turbo time. If only it was that easy. This may all look like a lot, but in this series I hope to boost my own NA Barra and show you how I do it along the way so it's not nearly as daunting. The conversion itself, as we'll be doing it, is something I hope that you could realistically have done and ready to drive yourself to get a tune in one day on any spec Barra Falcon of this era, from the cheapest base XT right up to something like our XR6, which really isn't much of a step up anyway. And as always, we'll be doing this on a budget. Best of all, we'll be showing you the real world results that you can achieve doing this, and all going well, that it can still be a reliable car for you to drive every day. Today, we'll kick it off by running through our power and cost goals, and why I still think you don't need to sell your current car and buy a factory turbo one. Should be a great series, so make sure you're subscribed for more as it comes, and I hope you enjoy. Quick interruption to say, we're working with a company to start bringing out some merch. We'll be starting with t-shirts and hoodies in the current channel logo, and a new one I'm calling the Turbo Tyre logo, hopefully showing a prediction of what the BA will do at the end of our turbo series. Links will be in the description, or go to browniesgarage.com and click the store button. Or you can just keep watching and sharing the videos. Make no mistake, you're a huge support just by doing that, so thank you very much to all of you. Now, back to the video. Welcome back into Browney's Garage and to the first episode of this series. In our last series, we covered some of the more common or basic NA mods for our Barra-powered BA XR6 Falcon. This included an intake upgrade, a full exhaust upgrade, and an underdrive pulley kit to get more power out, as well as a shift kit and LSD to make the most of that. We then got the car tuned and gained 19 rear wheel kilowatts from that alone, ending up with a total of 172 kilowatts. Not a bad figure for one of these BAs, with less compression than the BF onwards, and without the later model FG intake manifold. This also helped us take nearly a full second off our quarter mile time and gain 6 miles per hour, even if our final time was still a little slow at a best of 15.5 seconds. As discussed in that series, the long first gear in the 4-speed auto really killed our 60-foot time and held that time back. And I'm confident we're only diff gears or a high stall away from a mid 14-second pass, or perhaps even better. If I'm honest, a big part of me did consider doing that and was a little disappointed by the track results. And man, did I cop it from a few of the internet experts as well. But they're not the ones I'm doing this for. It would have been more about proving what this setup was actually capable of, as well as reassuring myself that I wasn't somehow the issue. Or we could ignore all that, except that I'm always going to be an issue, and push some more power through the car with a turbo, where that long first gear and auto may actually be a good thing to help build boost and keep the car in that boost. Pretty clear what I opted to go with, and to boot, if we can build some boost off the line, we can hopefully bring that 60-foot that haunted us down just a little bit. This had always been the end goal, so I opted against changing the diff gear to better suit the NA setup, only to potentially swap it straight back later down the track for the turbo one. Now, this still won't be an all-out money no object setup aimed at track times. That's just not realistic for a lot of people, and it's not really what I want to do at this stage either, to be honest. This is for all those people that have an NA Falcon but want more power without having to sell it and buy a factory fitted turbo car, as I'm sure plenty of people say you have to do. With the prices of factory turbo cars going the way they are, we should be able to do this for a lot less than the changeover would cost. Add to that the extra compression that these NA cars have, and it may actually make them feel a little bit quicker, especially on the street and down low, where that will help improve torque. And what we're doing with this setup should actually have more power than a stock turbo car as well. For all those out there that I'm sure will say, but you'll bend the rods immediately and you're going to throw them into space, I'm not the first to do this. It's been done with good results and reliability, as long as you don't go looking for internet fame level of power, then you should be alright. Let's face it, any of the earlier factory turbo Barras aren't all that strong either, and the limitations on these seem pretty similar between the NA and the turbo models. And again, the later engines with stronger internals are only going up in price now, so that becomes less of an option. And if you're getting the feeling that I don't want to change an engine and make even more work for myself on this, then you'd be entirely correct. Fortunately though, these factory turbo cars do come with a bunch of fairly good parts that people upgrade when chasing big power or just want to tidy up the engine bay. So much of what we'll be using will be recycling these. This gives us the benefit of cost, being used parts, but also being factory parts. They should generally bolt straight on without any hassles and be made of good materials. A good example of this is the factory turbo and exhaust manifold. From what I've seen, these factory manifolds have been used to make power in excess of 400 rear wheel kilowatts and have the benefit of being made from really thick cast iron, so they're not prone to cracking or warping, and they can be picked up cheap from wrecked cars or people chasing those really big power figures. I plan to use this Garrett 3576 turbo, which is capable of slightly less power than the 3582 and commonly found on FG XR6 turbos. This can still see power up to around 300 rear wheel kilowatts or over, I believe, and whilst eBay turbos have come a long way in reliability, these can be had cheap enough from guys upgrading that I decided to go this route. Speaking of everyone's favourite website, eBay, we'll also be taking a chance to upgrade or renew a few of the factory parts that won't suit our needs or that are serviceable items anyway. So we'll be doing a little bit of preventative maintenance stuff, and there'll be some items that aren't really needed but I wanted anyway. Which is a good chance to do some parts unboxing, because apparently that's still a thing on the internet, as much as I find it a little odd. But also because I haven't been brought up around a lot of nice cars or even with many friends into them, and I'm super cheap with priorities elsewhere. So just being able to touch and look at these parts, nerd out about them a little bit and see them up close, see how they function, it's actually pretty awesome for me. As I've mentioned, we'll be doing some preventative stuff. In this case, I'm thinking of a trans service and fuel pump upgrade. Okay, so that isn't hugely exciting even for me, but I will be weighing up whether the extra work of installing just a pump with a small kit like this one is actually worth it, as opposed to a full drop-in assembly for, you know, the little bit of money you save for the extra hassle of doing just this. In the category of upgrading factory parts that you probably don't need to, we have a new shiny Turbo Smart wastegate actuator. There's plenty of factory units out there still working fine, but being such a big part of helping not grenade this engine, it seemed like something that was worth it. And it comes most commonly with a higher base spring rate of 7 psi or 12 psi, as opposed to the factory roughly 5, I believe. So you could use this as an option in a basic setup for setting boost rather than an aftermarket boost controller or fitting a turbo ECU, and the wastegate control solenoid with its wiring loom, it's just a little bit simpler. You can get away with this. This thing is a really nice looking unit. Should be bolt on, and TurboSmart obviously has a pretty great reputation. On the other end of the scale to the TurboSmart actuator, we'll have some parts that are questionable, I guess. Like this eBay spec intercooler that I'm hoping to do some testing on. I might need a second to open this one. I'm certainly not expecting the 20 kilowatt gain claimed by the eBay ad, but looking at the size difference between this and the factory unit, I'm hoping this will be a cheap way to help reduce the heat soak just a touch and reduce any power we lose due to high intake temps, hopefully. As I said though, we can do some testing on this, but obviously I know it won't stack up against the kit that costs 5 times the price of this one, which retails from between $160 to $200 and uses the factory piping, hopefully anyway. Then, as always, there'll be some stuff that definitely isn't necessary, like our gauge pod and a gauge install. Because if you don't install a boost gauge, have you even turboed your car? Okay, it's not entirely unnecessary. It will be somewhat important to watch our boost while we're making sure everything is working as it should. And I've got a wideband kit there as well that I'm hoping to install with this. Both boost level and air fuel ratios are of course info that we really want to be mindful of to try and keep things from any sort of rapid unplanned engine disassembly. I'd like to avoid that if I can. Looking at all of this, I'm sure there's some parts I'm probably missing that I need. There's some bits and pieces off camera that are boring that I didn't stack up here, but this episode actually doubles as a chance for me to start checking that I have everything I need. And then get distracted by shiny new parts and forget about it. Now, some of this I may use, some of it I may not, and plans may change, I don't know. These things happen, and they've happened in the past before, but it's a good starting point, and I think we're mostly there. While we're on plans, let's have a chat about the goals for this conversion. I'll do this by breaking it into 4 categories. Category 1, ease of conversion. If you can unbolt some, granted potentially rusty and old parts, and bolt on new goodies, then this should be doable. No custom fabrication, no programming or home tuning, no rewiring the whole car. It should all be manageable by your average hack at home, just like me, with average hand tools and some tools that most people will have, or if you don't, they're fairly cheap and affordable. This includes getting it to your tuner. I'm nowhere near a tuner here and am probably an hour or more away from max performance, where it will be going again. We'll discuss a few ways of doing this during the series, but the plan for all of these will be to have it drivable to get over there. If you're close to a tuner, then a tow may be a good option, but I'll have to imagine it would be at least a few $100s as a minimum for me. And if you're close enough, it would make it even easier to have it driven there. As long as I can be disciplined and not beat on it though, I do think there's a few options for this. Which leads us to point number 2, reliability. It would be all well and good to go and try and max out this setup and try for big internet numbers. But if the car's broken and you can't drive it, then there's not much point in doing that. As part of this, we'll also be doing a couple of jobs that you at home can choose to skip when doing yours, particularly if your car is well serviced and up to date. I want to be able to drive this car to the drag strip, still have it be fun and do some okay numbers, race it, and then drive it back home without worrying. And at this level, the level we'll be shooting for anyway, it shouldn't be on the ragged edge, about to blow at any time. But you never know, anything could happen. Category number 3 is of course performance. I want to be able to take any spec BA or BF Falcon from a completely stock 16-15 second car and get it deep into the 13s. Still nothing crazy by today's standards, but should feel pretty good out on the streets and be plenty of fun while having that reliability in mind, hopefully. Plus, I like to experience cars at different levels and enjoy it along the way. But this should then have a setup that could have a few things changed to make even more power when or if you wanted. So for power figures, I would be hoping for 220 rear wheel kilowatts or higher, somewhere around there. And I think that's doable. You should be able to achieve that with a fairly bare minimum setup as we'll be doing. And we may even sneak in a second tune to see just how far we can push this setup at the time. And on to our final category, cost of course. I'm aiming to do this all, running, tune, driving, done, for under $3,000. I'll be sure to do a run through of the total costs and detail all the parts we use later in this series, once I know it all actually works. And I'm confident that however much I end up spending, that there are even cheaper ways of doing this, especially if you're patient and pick up some good deals along the way. It's still a decent amount of money, but if we can do it for that, we'll be at a similar amount as what we spent on the NA series for probably another 50 plus rear wheel kilowatts. So for bang for buck, it should be really good. No surprises there. We will be using the shift kit and the diff from that first series, so that will help with the quarter mile times, but they're not must-haves and they're cheap enough if you choose to add those on anyway. And to help with the cost, if you have modified the car already, as we did in that NA series, then you may be able to sell off some of the bits and recover some of your costs. For us, that will largely be the exhaust system, I think, if we do sell that off. Now, on cost, it's important to touch on a subject quickly: budget or scope creep. We've said a number of times that we'll be doing this fairly cheap and bare bones, but it is really easy to fall down the rabbit hole of, while you're in there, why not upgrade blank for a little more power? There's always an argument for this, but you need to set yourself a good, solid goal that you think you'll be happy with and try to stick to it. In saying that, try not to have your goal be dictated purely by what will fit your budget. If you really think about it and you don't think you'll be okay to settle at whatever your end goal is, then maybe it's best to wait, save a little bit longer, and do it when you can, so you're not paying twice for those parts. For me, this may get further upgrades in the future, but I wanted to see what can be done fairly base level, and I'm sure I'll be happy with it there for now, at least for a while I work away on other projects out there. And to be honest, I think it's good to experience a car at different power levels and develop yourself as a driver rather than going straight from 100 kilowatts to 500 plus in one big hit, which could see the channel and me ended in a fiery crash. And I won't let you have that, no matter how much you'd prefer it, Mr. I'm going to give this video a thumbs down before I even watch it. So, to round out the video, there's always one point that comes up when you're looking at modifying a car. Why not just buy a better car? Or more specifically here, why not just buy an already turbo car? Well, I've mentioned some points on this earlier, and if you've made it this far, then you likely don't need convincing. To be fair, I'm not terribly interested in convincing anyone who's against this, and that's why this is towards the end of the video. But just for the hell of it, here we go. Have you seen the price of factory turbo cars now? Barring the odd bargain, looking at car sales at the time of doing this, the cheapest BA XR6 Turbo is around 10 grand, and they've only been heading up at the moment. I'm sure you could do it a touch cheaper if you wade through all the examples on Facebook Marketplace, but I couldn't be bothered sorting through all the $1,234 examples that are actually 20 grand or thereabouts. And it's pretty hard to find something that's clean and not been messed around with in some way. The conversion we're doing can be done on a $500 BA and up, and with modest power goals should still be just as reliable and save you thousands of dollars. It's been done plenty of times now. And you might even learn something along the way. Now, in saying that, anytime you modify a car, there are risks, but plenty goes wrong in stock cars too, especially poorly maintained or thrashed ones. And there's obviously a big difference between building a reliable track car, where the car is under a lot more stress, than a street car, as this one will largely be. So, do your research, do what's right for you, and then enjoy it without worrying about any unconstructive feedback or people who blindly hate it. There's probably something to that for life in general, I guess, but I'm not even qualified to talk about cars, so let's not go there today and wrap it up at that. I hope you're pumped for what we have coming up. I'm planning to cover the conversion in good detail, as well as the work before and after. So don't expect just one episode where we go from a completely stock NA engine to turbo with no explanation in between. And then it'll be time to head back to the track and improve our times. Man, I really hope so anyway, I'm sure we will. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe for more, and share it with your NA mate. We'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.